What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And we're coming to you after the end of the season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They fall to the Indiana Pacers in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. Chris, how do you react to this end of the season, how the Cavs fared? And we're going to get into what everybody said behind the scenes, but I want your thoughts first.
Oh, God. Must-win game. Game 5 at home. Darius Garland, Max Strus combined to go 4 for 24. Jarrett Allen was invisible. The pressure, the physicality of the Pacers bothered the Cavs once again. I just think after this kind of season and this kind of loss, it's strange here to me, guys, because the Cavs did a lot of things right. I think they resisted the temptation to break up the core four after a flameout last year. They made the ballsy move to move on from JB Bickerstaff, and they found the right coach in Kenny Atkinson. They went for it at the trade deadline. They sacrificed chemistry and camaraderie, brought in DeAndre Hunter, who was like a missing piece, who brought some things both offensively and defensively that this team was missing. They managed the regular season the right way. Donovan Mitchell made sacrifices, took a step back to elevate and empower his teammates. So there were so many things that they did right throughout the course of this year. But for it to end like this, the same place it did last year in the Eastern Conference semifinals, with a 4-1 series loss against a team that was favored in 0 games of this series, a team that was a clear underdog against you going into the series. Like, at that point, it's just not about the journey. You're expected to win. And it's very difficult to process this kind of defeat because of all those different things. Because I think there's a lot of soul searching that this franchise has to do now after this. I think the narrative is going to continue about this team. I think there are going to be a lot of harsh things said about this team, and rightfully so. But this season, despite the fact that they won 64 games, despite the fact that they were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, this season was about getting to the conference finals and the NBA finals. You had multiple players using the C word. You had people inside the organization using the C word. They lost in the Eastern Conference semifinals to the Indiana Pacers, the 4 seed, who, like I said, was favored in 0 of the games. This was a failure of a season for the Cavs. Point blank, period. They did not get to the destination that they wanted to get to. And there are a variety of reasons for it. But I think what it showed is that the Cavs thought they were ready to make a step forward. They weren't ready. Indiana was ready for that.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Donovan's press conference tonight and the way he just kept hitting the table and saying, man, you guys are going to write some ish about us. It's almost like he was like trying to 8 Mile us, and Eminem's like he's going to say all the things about himself.
Dude, a gangsta, his real name, Clarence.
Exactly. I know something about you. You went to Louisville. That's an ACC school. We're going to write those things because at this point, like, at what point does a narrative stop being a narrative?
Right.
Like, I said it after Game 4. You guys are perpetuating this narrative, and that's me putting it nicely. After 3 straight playoff series exits that underwhelm, let's say. Yeah. We got 2 data points. We're 2 years removed from the next series. We're supposed to be done with all the physicality, mental toughness talk. Well, we're not. We're still talking about it. It's like one of the first 100 words that were out of Kenny Atkinson's mouth tonight. We're physical and mental toughness. And he tried to dance around the physicality thing, force, aggression, whatever you want to call it. I would say resilience. A lot of different ways. I sent this out to the subtexters during the game. A lot of different ways you could slice up this series. When the Pacers fell behind big, they kept fighting, and they ended up coming back twice and winning the game. Cavs fell behind big. They let go of the freaking rope. It's not that simple, but you can make it that simple, honestly. And I'll be really interested to see what President of Basketball Operations Kobe Altman has to say about this, because I mean it can be very easy. We have praised him for his patience on this show in our writing, because clearly he was right to think there was more meat on the bone with this team this year. My question now is, how patient are you waiting on these guys to grow up as playoff guys?
Yep.
And the answer can be the answer can be sort of patient.
Yeah.
Like you want more out of Evan Mobley, but he clearly is more ready now than he was last year and the year before.
Right.
Darius Garland, that's a tough eval. That's a real tough eval, honestly. I'm the closest to giving him a pass, and I've been really hard on Darius in the past. I'm the closest of all the injured guys. I'm the closest to giving him a pass, because you could see tonight by the end, I think he switched shoes at one point.
He did
tonight. He did, yeah. So I would assume that's him. I wasn't there for his interview tonight. I haven't listened to it yet.
He didn't talk.
I assume. Oh, he didn't talk. Okay, well then we'll talk to him tomorrow. I assume that was discomfort with the carbon fiber insert, and then that's again. I'm assuming. I don't know, but I'm assuming. And then he tried to play with it for a little while. He could barely walk at the end. But we still have questions at the very least about his playoff readiness. And like Chris said, Jarrett Allen, poof, 6 rebounds last 2 games. What do you do about that? How patient are you willing to be? And what are your other options if you don't want to be so patient? These are the questions we have to answer now.
I think the biggest thing for me, it wasn't the physicality, basically what they were talking about, because obviously Kenny Atkinson made it clear, like physicality, force, like all these things go hand in hand. For me, it's the mental toughness, the mental fortitude that continuously needs to be harped on. And obviously, for somehow he still said, I like our maturity, while also saying that I think we need our mental toughness to improve. I think that is where the Cavs need to start, right? Because Max Strus feeling the need to send a text message into the group chat, like, if you don't believe, don't show up to work, that means that there was some people in the locker room that weren't believing.
Not necessarily.
Or we're giving the indication that they weren't ready for what was to come. So what I think for this mental toughness of this team is that they hear all of the stuff that is being said about them. Clearly, Donovan knows it's going to be written. Donovan understands that we have a job to do as well. But how do they respond has been what the saying has been throughout the entire season. And they still have yet to show me that they can respond positively. And especially after this Indiana Pacers series, there's no indication that they're going to be able to move forward, especially with this group as a whole.
I mean, I think the hard thing for the Cavs to process is the fact that Indiana turned out to be the better team. They were more together. They were more connected. They were more composed. They kept their poise, and they stayed true to themselves. I think that is a big difference in this entire series, is that when pressure ramps up and you're faced with adversity, are you, or do you go outside of who you are? You know, throughout the course of the season, one of the things that we praised Kenny Atkinson for was staying true to himself. You know, the Cavs were mired in this losing streak and everybody was going crazy in March about it. And he had them play a game of horse because he thought that was best for his team, because he had the pulse of his team and because he wanted to stay true to himself and make sure that he continued to harness that joy. It felt like in this series, when the Cavs were pushed to the brink, when they had all the pressure on their shoulders, when Indiana was outplaying them and pushing them around and making them feel something that Miami simply couldn't, that level of adversity, making them feel something that they didn't in the regular season. They lost themselves. Tonight was not Cavs basketball. Look at the way that they played on offense. Their shot profile. They had 10 assists Are you kidding me? 10 assists on 30 made shots, 30 plus made shots. That's not Cavs basketball. Indiana tested them in a certain kind of way, and I would say they broke them because they lost themselves. Because all of the things that they did that led to success during the regular season, all of the things that they did that they felt like were going to be advantageous for them coming into this series in this particular matchup, they did none of it. Not consistently enough, certainly. I mean, and the results speak for themselves. And Kenny Atkinson said it after game one. After game one, he said, I didn't recognize that team on the floor. How many times were you watching this series between the Cavs and the Pacers and saying to yourself, what the hell are they doing? What is this offense? What is this spacing? What is this defense? And that's because of the stress that Indiana put on them relentlessly. And they just didn't know how to respond to it. They just didn't know how to handle it. And I think that is the definition of composure. I think that's the definition of poise. And when the Cavs pressed Indiana, when they stressed Indiana, when they made Indiana feel comfortable, they stayed true to themselves. They didn't go outside of themselves. They calmly executed their offense. They didn't get rattled. They weren't phased. And like all of those things speak to a level of maturity, basketball maturity, that the Cavs are still searching for. It did feel like in this series, guys, that it was a bunch of adults, a bunch of grown-ups against a team that is still learning what it needs to learn about playoff basketball. And I think I'm not putting words in Donovan Mitchell's mouth. I'm not going to do that. But I sense frustration with him from a standpoint of, I'm ready. I'm ready. Like, who else is in this organization alongside me? Again, he didn't say that, but that's my sense of his disappointment and his frustration, that he's on a specific timeline and he's ready to compete for championships. And the other most important players within this, it's the same conversation as last year. Like, as you said, Jimmy, Evan Mobley's better. He's a better version of the guy from last year. Darius Garland is better. He's a better version of the guy from last year. But better enough to compete for a championship? I think that's a legitimate question coming out of this series. And I think there's some that are wondering, and possibly Donovan included, like, who else in this organization is on that same timeline with me? Who else in this organization is ready for everything that playoff basketball requires? And are the most important people in this organization ready for that?
Yeah, we're going to have, I think we'll have a couple of fun off-season podcasts as it
And by the way, I
pertains
think
to
that
those
extends to Kenny too, a
conversations.
little bit too.
Oh, yeah. We'll have some, yeah, Kenny, Chris and I were talking about this before we started recording. Kenny in this fourth quarter, I mean, throwing darts in every direction, throwing darts over his shoulder without looking, it felt like, in the fourth quarter. Ty Jerome, okay, Ty Jerome, you scored 8 points. Go back in there. No, not Ty Jerome. Darius Garland. No, Isaac Okoro. 2 bigs. We want to try 2 bigs. We had a nice little stretch of getting offensive rebound. No 2 bigs. DeAndre Hunter needs to go out there because he had a nice little resurgent game. I mean, like, what's going on out there? And I think that's Kenny searching in part because, like we're saying, the Pacers broke the Cavs' identity, and there's no lineup you can point to and say, well, this is what worked really well for us in the past. You're getting cooked the whole series. You did the 2 bigs had a night. The one game you did win, you got a lot of offensive rebounds. That's the one thing you could lean on. But of course, there were many other moments where you guys were lagging behind in transition. So this is why this conversation is why I really, really, really hope that Kobe Altman doesn't come out and say we had a bunch of injuries, because it's just not that simple.
Yeah,
it's just not that simple. Obviously, Darius wasn't himself. Obviously, Evan Mobley and DeAndre Hunter missing a game, that hurts you. But you were winning that game by 20 points.
Yeah.
And you were ahead by 7 with less than a minute left. Like, you blew it. You blew it late in game. I mean, it's so eerie how the competitive games in this series, they followed such an eerily similar script.
Yeah.
Like the game, I think it was game 1, the Pacers get off to a great start, but the other two, it's like, okay, the Cavs get off to a good start, Pacers just chip. It's like, it's a little bit like Knicks Boston, where it's like, if we can get you late in the game, close fourth quarter, we know we got you. We know we got you because we're more composed in those moments. What would be? I wonder how, if you floated this to a Cavs higher up, how would they respond to this? The Cavs are not close to winning a championship right now. That's not what I thought 10 days ago.
Sure.
But it is clear to me now. I mean, just think of it just logistically. You lost in 5 games in the second round. That's not close to winning a championship.
Right.
And then the context of how you lost those games. Did you guys catch any of Denver OKC tonight? Those guys are playing some ball, man. How many Cavs are surviving out there?
Yeah.
How many Cavs are going to be able to withstand the swings of those series against that OKC crowd? No disrespect to the Pacers crowd. They get after it. It's a little different. I think Cavs, OKC, some of these crowds are a little bit different. Whew. Cavs couldn't even – Cavs are blowing away in the wind against the Orlando and Indiana crowds.
Yeah.
You haven't seen anything. You haven't seen anything. But yeah, I don't know how to process. They're so far out of their norms. Even like with Donovan, it's hard for me to evaluate him even because it's like, well, he's just going full hero ball mode.
Right.
So is that Donovan getting outside of himself, or is that Donovan reading the room?
Fair question.
Maybe the answer is yes. I don't know. I don't know, but I could not have given the way things started the rest of the regular season. This is like borderline worst case scenario.
I think when just breaking this game down a little bit, the Cavs had a 19-point lead in this game. Obviously, Jimmy referenced the 20-point lead they had in game 2. They had a 19-point lead in game 5. And at one point in the contest, they had a 38-14 edge in paint points. That lead ended up just being 6 points by the end of the contest, 50-44 in favor of the Cavs. My thing, and I'm not trying to point fingers, but I think there's going to be bigger conversations. We're talking about the viability again, just like last year, of Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen, how they fit with this team and those different assets, and how they play alongside the readiness of the players on this roster. Jarrett Allen having a great first quarter, 3 of 3 from the field, and having 3 rebounds. He had more points, field goal attempts, field goals made, rebounds combined than he had in one quarter of game 5 than he had in the entirety of game 4. So we're on the edge of our seat. This is the Jarrett Allen that we needed. This is the Jarrett Allen that the Cavs wanted to have in game 3. That's how they helped them get into the lead with the paint points and how they were taking over the physicality on the interior. Then for the remainder of the game, Jarrett Allen has 1 rebound, right? Unacceptable. And I think in the second quarter, there was a moment where Miles Turner rejected Jarrett Allen. And after that, it just felt like Jarrett was beside himself, not only on the offensive end, but on the defensive end as well, getting caught in rotations, getting caught looking at the ball, getting caught not moving or guarding on the perimeter. And I wrote about this for my buzzer story after tonight's game. I just think Jarrett Allen is a guy that if he fought so hard to be able to show that he could play 82 games in the regular season. He was available in the playoffs this year. But then you just evaporate into thin air when the team needs you most. That's the opposite of what you had been doing all season. And I think it's hard to have this conversation because of how the relationship that Kenny Atkinson and Jarrett Allen have. But we saw it with that toggling in the fourth quarter. Like Kenny was like, I want you to be out there. We're up 6 points. I need you to be out there for us to be able to just hold on to this. But you're not giving me anything. And I think there's a realization of who, as Chris was saying, who is ready to help take this team to the next level. And I'm not so sure that Jarrett Allen is it, just simply because of what he wasn't able to accomplish in a series where we knew he was going to be at a disadvantage. And he didn't show the capability of making adjustments and being able to simply be there for his guys when needed most. And I think it's more hurtful to say because he wasn't there last year, and then you're here this year, and you made maybe a similar, if not lesser, impact.
Can I defend JA for a second?
Yeah.
For starters, before Game 4, he was 17-10 on 70% shooting in these playoffs. Rock solid. Miami Heat, we've already established, not a real playoff team. We respected them too much. The Cavs, clearly the jump in competition played a role. By the way, I like maybe that should be a thing for like a quarter, but after that, like, step it up, buddy. All right, it's the playoffs. But I will say this about Jarrett Allen. Everything that Jarrett Allen does, Jarrett Allen's activity is a function of how involved he feels in other areas of the game. And how involved he is in other areas of the game is not necessarily within his control. And I think that while Jarrett Allen deserves a ton of criticism for not being able to manufacture that energy himself and not getting more rebounds, and yes, Miles Turner was bullying him at times. Like, you just got to be stronger with the ball in your hands. Okay? It was noticeable. It can't be every time someone tips the scales above 260, you shrink. Can't have that. But the Cavs broke. And when the Cavs break, I feel like it's Jarrett Allen's going to break. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Does that make sense? Like, I think Jarrett Allen's performance is a function of his environment all the time. And when the Cavs are functioning at a high level, Jarrett Allen looks awesome. And when the Cavs are not functioning at a high level, you get moments like this where he disappears because he can't go over there, jab step, and say, give me the ball. You know, like, it has to be, everything else has to be working around him. So again, deserves criticism, but he's a cog in the machine. And the machine there was a lot going wrong with it.
But that goes hand in hand with playoff readiness, does it not? Like, you cannot succumb to the environment. If you're going to be a core,
that's his literal job. Is to he's. What do you want? Okay, so like, what do you want Jarrett Allen to do?
His energy shouldn't depreciate because the intensity of the game becomes too much, right?
I don't think that's why. I don't know that that's why that's happening. And that could be part of the reason why. I think it's because he doesn't get the ball, and that's how most big men operate.
I'm not talking about scoring. I'm talking about being active defensively. I'm talking about being on the boards. I'm talking about, like, we all understand Jarrett Allen is in the system of the offense, right? But that's not why Jarrett Allen is mainly on the floor for the Cavs. He's on the floor to get boards. He's on the floor to play defense. He's on the floor to be physical and play with energy. He wasn't doing that.
I'm just saying those things are connected to how involved he feels. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that Jarrett was brought out to the perimeter in this series, and I think we knew that that was going to happen. Miles Turner is a stretch big. Pascal Siakam can play out there on the perimeter. The Cavs did some different things on the defensive end of the floor with their zone, and sometimes Evan Mobley was up high. Sometimes Jarrett Allen was down low. Sometimes Jarrett Allen was out on the perimeter. So, I mean, I think you have to acknowledge the fact that part of the reason why Jarrett wasn't getting the rebounds around the rim is because he wasn't in position to get those, because he was out there on the perimeter, because he was guarding Tyrese Halliburton on switches, or he was guarding Aaron Nesmith on switches, or he was guarding Andrew Nembhard on switches. So, like, the positions that the Cavs put Jarrett in because of their switch heavy approach that didn't do him a lot of favors. That it was very similar to me. If you go back to 2 years ago in the Knicks series, like everybody harped on Jarrett not getting rebounds, but he was the guy that was blitzing Jalen Brunson, and then he had to recover, and he was behind every single player that was in the paint because he was running from the perimeter. In this series, it was kind of similar. He had to get out to the perimeter to contest those shots and defend on an island, and at the same time try and get himself back into position so that he could get rebounds. And I think it was a difficult assignment. And I think we always knew that it was going to be a difficult assignment for him in this matchup against this particular opponent, against their spacing, against their speed and quickness. And sometimes that's what the playoffs are about. And I guess the big takeaway from me with all of that is, if he is a sometimes player or certain matchup type player, can you really look at him as a core member of this team? You know what I'm saying? Like that,
Or
to
pay him
me,
$30 million.
or pay him $30 million. Because I think we do understand that there are certain matchups that are going to be problematic for him. And if that's going to be the case, like, how do you work your way around that? Like, what kinds of things do you have to do from a roster composition to make that a little bit more manageable? And I think that's a hard answer for this organization moving forward.
So the next question would have to come based on the fourth quarter and something that Jimmy was mentioning and how Kenny was operating with it. What do you think was the correct answer that was not gone to for this Cavs team? Because
there wasn't one. No, there wasn't one. I mean, I think the reality became the reality as this series unfolded. And I think at some point as a coach, you try to go what you think is the best of bad options. And Indiana was a really difficult matchup. Indiana was always going to be a really difficult matchup. And I thought Rick Carlisle was brilliant with a lot of the stuff that he did. I also thought that he had what turned out to be a more reliable roster. Like, one of the things that we said coming into this series is, okay, if you're in the schoolyard and you're picking all these guys and you're just running through all of them, who's your first pick? Who's your second pick? Who's your third pick? And coming into this series, we thought a lot of Cavs players would be near the top of that. Certainly Donovan number one, and then you keep going on and on and on. It certainly didn't play itself out that way. It did not. And I think part of that had to do with how Rick Carlisle was able to manage situations, the adjustments he was able to make. It turned out as the series progressed that he had more reliable options. He had more chess pieces that could move in different kind of ways. And, when Kenny Atkinson has to go with like basically offense defense stuff for the final 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, I think that's pretty telling. When he feels he needed to bench Ty Jerome in the first half because he was having such a bad series, when he felt like at times he needed to go to a defense heavy lineup that did not work. I think that tells you all you need to know. He was searching. He was out there searching, scrambling to try and find solutions to a lot of the stuff that Rick Carlisle and the Pacers were throwing at the Cavs. And he didn't find those answers, in part because I don't know that he had those answers.
So as the idiot who wrote Cavs in 5 because of the playoff golden rule, which is they had better players. Oops. I feel like I need to address this. It's not just the same guy's been emailing me after every Pacers win, just hammering me. Like, what am I supposed to say? You're right, dude. It's not just that, like, okay, Darius wasn't a top 5 draft pick in this series, let's say. Evan Mobley, maybe fringe top 5 draft pick if we're being generous. Game 3 was awesome. No? Okay. Donovan, sure. It's also like Kenny said something tonight, like to try to avoid the injury excuse. Like, we've been the best 6 through 10 team in the league all year. The Cavs bench got outscored in 3 straight games coming into tonight, and I think the final bench tally was like Pacers plus 40 something for the series. I haven't done all the math yet, but it was like, I think it was like 167 to 117 coming into tonight. And I know the Cavs won it by a little bit tonight, but like, didn't see that coming. Thomas Bryant coming out party tonight, sure, and had as many points tonight as he did in the 4 previous games in the series combined tonight. 9, by the way. Not like he killed it. Obi Toppin, awesome. Benedict Mathurin, awesome. This is the other point. This idea that like the Pacers are like this crazy experienced playoff team. Okay, Pascal Siakam is. Miles Turner has played in like 50-something playoff games, but most of those are just first-round Ls. Most of them are first-round Ls. Same with TJ McConnell. Tyrese Haliburton has played like 20-something playoff games. We're not talking about the Celtics. This is not like your...
We're talking about Indiana compared to the Cavs. And that becomes a drastic difference. It does.
Is it? Is it a drastic difference?
Yes, with the exception of Tristan Thompson, Max Strus, and Donovan Mitchell, of course it's a drastic difference. Like
Darius Garland has played in as many playoff games as Tyrese. Benedict Mathurin watched the playoffs last year. Jarrett Walker watched the playoffs last year. Obi Toppin, comparable. Miles Turner, again, more games.
Way
first
more
round
games.
Ls.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
First round Ls.
It doesn't matter. Experience is experience, whether it's the first round, second round, or the conference finals.
I think it's, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think I'm saying this to say.
And Rick Carlisle's like 200 to 5.
Sure. That's huge.
Or something like that.
That's huge. Yes, Rick Carlisle versus Kenny, not a fair fight in the playoff experience category. But player-wise, I just think you need to do better. Like, the experience, that conversation doesn't sway me. You guys just did poorly.
So the main question that I was trying to get to at the end of the fourth quarter is when Darius Garland obviously re-aggravates the toe injury and is like by the opposite side of the scorer's table, like reaching down to try and figure out if he's going to be able to even play for the remaining however many minutes. Do you think it was wise that Kenny Atkinson stuck with Darius in that situation?
What did you want him to do differently? Who did you want him to go to instead?
I think Ty Jerome was on the bench at that point, and Ty Jerome had been on a heater at that point. So I would have gone that way.
There's a save a player from himself argument here. And eventually, Darius was so limpy that, it had to be done. But Ty Jerome, who coming into tonight had scored 11 total points in his last 3 games on 12% shooting. I get it. He did have a nice little stretch there at the third, fourth. Like I told, again, another pre-pod combo. I think if Ty Jerome doesn't do that, there's a chance the Cavs lose this game by like 15, 20 points because the arena was so dead and they were so in search of – so Ty Jerome does have like a unique relationship with this crowd. Nothing gets this crowd. I mean, like, besides like a Donovan poster, I feel like Ty Jerome pull-up threes is just like – it's like freaking Monster energy drinks to these people. And I love it. I love that they have that relationship. But yeah, the other, what else was happening with Ty Jerome? My goodness, they were going after him.
Yeah, they were.
My goodness, he was giving those points back. And I hear you. Darius clearly didn't have it tonight. Respect him for gutting it out, but he was not very good in basically any regard, except for, again, giving you an extra ball handler. But at that point, like, to nitpick Kenny on that stuff, it sounded like we're talking about JB Bickerstaff again.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was such an insignificant spot of the game, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I thought the game ended the minute that Miles Turner went to the free throw line and put Indiana up by 9 coming out of that timeout. Now, obviously, it didn't end there. Donovan had some miraculous shots DeAndre Hunter got fouled on a 3-pointer, but that was the moment to me when they went up 9. Those foul shots coming out of the timeout. That's honestly when I started like really writing my gamer and filling it in with all the stuff as if it was a Cavs loss to me. So I just think like those kind of minor decisions were so insignificant when talking about the overarching theme of this series.
It's like we're really back. We're back at square one, aren't we? Like, Kenny, let's question all these lineup decisions, or is the adjustment just play better? Like that's what we were talking about this time last year with JB Bickerstaff. Man, that is an indictment of the people in that locker room, or the way this roster is built, or both, or something like that.
Look, I think the truth is there was one player for the Cavs that played to his standard. One in this entire series. And it was Donovan Mitchell. Right? Anybody want to push for somebody? I mean, you probably would have said Max Strus before tonight's game, but 0 for 9 from the field, 0 for 6 from 3-point range. That's not a good lasting image. So like if Evan Mobley is not going to be the second best player in the series that he was supposed to be, if he's not going to play like a second team all NBA player that he's going to be, it's going to be hard. If Darius Garland is not going to play like the all-star that he is, like I'm going to focus on those guys first, right? Because more is expected of those guys. More should be expected of those guys because they're more important to the success of this team. But you can keep going down the list. Like if DeAndre Hunter plays like the guy that the Cavs acquired from the Atlanta Hawks, who is supposed to fill in the gaps and be a missing piece of this thing, then it's a more competitive series. I don't know if they win the series, but it's certainly a more competitive series. So me, like just when it comes to evaluating this whole series and a 4-1 series loss, like I'm looking at Darius. I'm looking at Evan. Now, part of it is I'm also looking at Kenny because the involvement of Evan, he didn't play a single game. I don't think in the playoffs, honestly, where he got more than 13 field goal attempts. Like that wasn't Cavsy from the regular season. So like, I think if you're slicing up the blame pie, there's a lot to go around with the exception of Donovan Mitchell. Like he's the only one who played to his level. And even that like is a little bit funky because his shooting numbers weren't there. His 3-point numbers weren't there, but like he found other ways to be successful and kind of carry this offense. So, you know, Indiana's good. And if your best players are not going to play to that level, then it's going to be really, really hard for you to compete no matter like what coaching moves you try to make.
You know what about Donovan though? Like if Donovan Mitchell gives you 3 straight 30-point games, 2 of those are 40-point games.
Yeah.
You just got to win those. They went 1 and 2 in those, and 2 of them were at home.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like crazy talk.
I know.
That's like implausible. I will defend Evan a little bit further. Look at me, stand up for the tall guys today. This never happens. Jarrett Allen's getting no rebounds. I don't even mention it. I do mention it, but I'm not hammering him for it. Evan Mobley not being assertive. It's not all like it's clearly a shared thing where Evan Mobley at some point just needs to say, "Give me the ball." The guards need to give him the ball, and Kenny needs to tell him to give him the ball. But here's what I'll tell you. Evan Mobley was really good in the first quarter tonight. They were running a lot through him. Mm-hmm. And it looked like that was something that this had legs. Like, oh, this could really extend the series with this stuff. And they just stopped freaking doing it. Last 3 games of this series, Evan Mobley averaged 7 first quarter points per game. 2 of them were double-digit quarters. In the second quarters, after those, 2 shots per game.
Yeah.
2 shots per quarter, sorry. 2 shots per quarter. After this guy, you tell me, is the most important player on your team. He's one of the most improved offensive players in the league. It's just like, it's so crazy to me. You're telling me all these things about how awesome this guy is, and then you don't give him the ball. Make that make sense to me.
Yeah.
I can't.
there was a lot of lip service throughout this entire season, to be honest. And just because I know we have another podcast that'll come out tomorrow after we do end of season conversations. I don't want to keep this lingering too long, so I'm gonna read the stat from Mike Lucas, who, and I talked to him about this before the game, and he was like, "Hopefully, we don't have to use it," but it came to fruition. 16 teams in NBA history have ever won 64 or more regular season games with an average margin of victory of 9 or more points. The Cavs and the OKC Thunder both did it this year. Of the 14 prior, so not including the Cavs and OKC this year, 13 reached the NBA Finals. That other team that didn't, I believe it was the 2016 San Antonio Spurs. 12 of the 13 teams that reached the finals won the championship. So, obviously, we also know that the OKC Thunder won tonight. They're now 3-2 series lead against the Denver Nuggets. The Cavs have been bounced from the playoffs. They are now a part of history in a negative way, as much as they had a positive year, a regular season that was historic with so many different records, either matched or broken, were set entirely, where they had the opportunity to separate themselves from legacies set before them, precedents, all these things kind of came down to a crashing halt. And now we're back to square one, as Jimmy was saying, back to these conversations where we don't know what is to come in the offseason. And if anybody follows Dan Gilbert on social media, he said it might have been heartbreaking, but we will address the areas that need to be fixed. Take that however you want to. But
I think that's good. I think that's good that he put that out there because it shows a level of recognition that there are problems with this team. That even though they won 64 games, even though they were in the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, there are flaws. And those flaws showed themselves throughout the course of this series. And it's going to have to be a proactive approach. It's going to have to be a mirror test. And there's just no way, given the resume that the Cavs had, like that resume doesn't point to early exit in the playoffs. It just doesn't, not over the course of history. But it did for this team. And that's not acceptable. That's not good enough. They were talking about a championship, period. Like, they weren't good enough. They aren't good enough. And they have to find a way to become good enough. And Dan Gilbert, for him to recognize that, I think that's good. Now, Kobe Altman has to recognize that. Mike Gansey has to recognize that. John Nichols has to recognize that. Everybody in the front office has to recognize the same thing. Like, I think there are legitimate things that they need to fix with this roster that are not going to happen organically. It's going to have to be an external improvement this time.
I'm going to say this last thing and then let Jimmy get us out of here with his last take. But y'all remember how somber the ambiance was, the environment was when Kenny Atkinson had to let go of George Niang and Karis LeVert in the middle of the season? Could you imagine if he has to get rid of one of the players that he helped bring up, he helped churn through this season? I think you talk about the upper levels.
That's not the one. I think you're looking in the wrong direction, honestly. I think you are.
I'm not saying any names. I'm just saying, Chris, you talk about the upper portions of the organization having to accept this. I think it's also Kenny Atkinson who is known as a player development coach, who becomes super attached to all of the players who he has the opportunity of coaching. I think any player that would have to be taken away from this roster would not only affect him, but it's something that he would have a hard time with. So I'm not necessarily putting any names out there, but I'm saying that there feels like there will be changes this offseason. And we talked about it before today's game about the potential if things did not go the Cavs' way and how, as Jimmy mentioned in that podcast, fireworks. So, Jimmy, get us out of here with your last take before we roll out.
Well, to what you guys are saying, it would be quite the thing to build an entire season around camaraderie and chemistry and all that, and then say, okay, you're not good enough, kick you out of the cool locker room. our super fun locker room. You don't get to be here anymore. That is a difficult conversation, whoever it is.
Yes.
I want to expand upon. Yeah, that's sports. Thanks for explaining sports. To expand on our guy
sports.
Mike's stat here, because 64 wins is kind of. I mean, I know that's how many wins the Cavs had, but it's like kind of a strange. I went 60 wins because I used the same stat in my buzzer, and that 60 wins also throws the Celtics of this year into the mix. It's interesting. We have 3 teams in the same year. We have this 60 wins plus 9-point differential. It's been a while. Like there's only 23 of these teams, 60 wins, 9 plus 9-point differential. And to Ethan's point, 15 of them have won the title. Cavs are the 5th one to not advance to the conference finals. And you know what I notice? A lot of them are a couple things I notice. Teams that, first of all, most teams that do this, have done this, are before 2000. And most of the teams that have won the title are before 2000. So that to me, we're having these conversations at large about the difference between the playoffs and the regular season has never been larger. Mm-hmm. I think that data point might suggest that a little bit. Concerning part, the Cavs, 2 teams in modern-ish, let's say since 2010, that have missed out 60 wins plus 9-point differential. We're out west because the Western Conference is always a freaking monster. It seems like for 2 decades now, we got 50 win 8 seeds. All right. The East, as obviously, after what we've seen the last 5 games, we respect the Pacers. But the East is still perceived as the much weaker conference. So for this to happen to the Cavs in the second round out East, it's just another layer of how bad of a look this is for them.
All righty. Chris, anything before we go?
No, you said Jimmy was going to get the last thought, so I let Jimmy have the last thought.
Yeah, I just see your mind wheels turning, so wanted to give you the last hurrah if you wanted it.
No, I'm good.
All righty. Okay. Well, with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs Insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. Don't think just because the Cavs season is over that we are not going to be still giving you insights to Subtext. Also, we will still be doing Hey Chris podcast throughout the summer. So if you have questions about anything going on, any trades, any moves, any decisions, this is where you can have your voices heard. So to do all of that, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who signed up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.